Vamos a continuar con...
Good morning. We are going to continue with the second panel on energy efficiency. As we all know, energy efficiency is the fundamental basis for the transition processes of energy in our countries. And in this occasion, I want to introduce Mr. Sebastian Weber. He's a technical counselor from the Ministry of Mining and Energy of Uruguay, who will be moderating this panel. Without further ado, I give the floor to Mr. Weber. Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here in this second panel on energy efficiency. For those who were here in the first panel, we received lots of information, data regarding energy efficiency, which are the challenges in the future to attack the increase of energy efficiency. And in this panel, we will speak about sector issues. So we have architect Marcia Crosti, who is coordinator of the roadmap for the building of wood housing, Mr. Luis Maria Carrese, director of decentralization of Ministry of Cattle Raising, Fisheries and Agriculture, Mr. Gerardo Sastre, president of Association of Application Conducers, Mr. Sebastián Latancia, manager of demand and efficiency and demand, and Stephanie Denur, member of Econoler, with more than 55 years of experience in the development of energy efficiency policies, who will provide a more global view on this. So to start, I wanted to ask Luis Maria Carrese, tell us about a sector which is very important for the economy of the country. Which are the policies that you are fostering for energy efficiency? Because we all know that for competitiveness of business and producers is very important. So tell us which are the challenges of the sector, the characteristics of the sector, and how you are trying to lower these barriers in energy efficiency. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Sebastián, for your question. I thank you all for being here and for those who invited us. Undoubtedly, energy efficiency for the Ministry of Cattle Grazing, for the section I run, and for the public in general, it's something which is a difference between the sustainable and sustainable production, and that production that we do need in the future. So the need of working on this arose because in the decentralization unit we have 19 departments, and the tables of rural development, which is a fantastic tool. We have 57 tables in all the country where producers, institutions, and organizations gather and share their problems, their contributions, and their needs. From there, we see that the different states in the different sectors, for example, dairy, or in this agricultural emergency we had due to a drought, other possibilities. And this we had to work, we worked a lot closely with the Ministry of Energy and with UTE as well. So we started working in public policies in order to make them work. So at the beginning we worked with dairy mills, and during the pandemic we were starting to make an extent to redesign, and the first issue for this and the first limiting agent was energy and connectivity. So we found more than 500 places in this country where there was no electric energy. And then we had a second stage where we worked on efficiency. So with these dairy farms, we worked in more than 400 dairy farms in many departments of the country, and we asked them, what is the difference between having a battery, a condenser battery, a reactive energy or active energy? What's the difference in having a heat recovery, a good solar panel, a good heater? And there we found out that there were people that were paying 17,000 pesos in 2018. This was around 1,500 liters of milk. And now this person in 2023 is paying less than 800 liters of milk. So this is the relevance and the correlation that we have between, and the convergence between the Ministry of Cattle Grazing, the Ministry of Industry and Energy, and UTE. And we're strongly working, for example, with the ovens of the tobacco producers. There we're working with an intervention which is very much necessary. And today we have a public policy that's in the web page of the Ministry of Industry, and it's also in the Cattle Grazing Ministry webpage, and it's about solar bombs. And there we have to work on spreading the word, and this is something we are not doing yet. We are not reaching the rural producer, who is a different person. We cannot go produce ranch after ranch, ranch by ranch, and in fact censuses are very difficult to reach there. So with this solar pump with 9,000 liters in winter, we have a coupon of $25,000, which could cost $3,400. But this pump, we could also use it for pumping other things and to have energy there. And this includes and sensitizes, and this improves the quality of life. And this creates an equality, the effort of a woman, the effort of a man. This is very gender equality leading, because when we speak about energy efficiency, it's not only from the point of view of economy, from the Ministry of Cattle Grazing. This new rural spectra goes hand in hand with technology. This goes hand in hand with development, and this goes hand in hand with energy efficiency and other activities that luckily we take with the Ministry of Industry, UTE, and different institutions and organizations. And I want to remind the great work which has been done with the poultry producers, which has improved their economies, and this brings this the rural producer, the small family producer, which is living a better life. Thank you very much. Your explanation was really clear. Now I wanted to ask Marcia about a very important topic. I remember some months ago I was at a workshop on building, and they said there that the costs of the building costs are only 3% of the costs in comparison with maintenance and operational costs of a project. So I wanted to ask you, you are working with a roadmap for building wooden houses. So how is wood coming to support this sustainable and energy efficiency program? Well, thank you for your question, Sebastián. First, let me greet the OLADE authorities in these 50 years. It's a nice anniversary we all celebrate, because we've worked a lot and in a great way. So I want to thank all the people here and all the people following us on the network. And I want to tell you that the government of Uruguay took the initiative of looking for more trade in the rural areas, thinking about creating value added. So the Ministry of Cattle Grazing, the Ministry of Housing thought about creating quality houses and lowering costs that are not in the constructive systems, but that are given in the execution, in the time the houses are built. So when we speak about wood, we know we are speaking about a virtuous cycle. So the tree, when it has grown, it captures CO2 and offers oxygen. So its virtue, it's also that it's a thermal isolating agent. And thinking of that, we built this roadmap for the building houses in wood, and we work with the academia, we work with laboratories, public and private organizations, and final users, which are very important. Their feedback is very important. So different actions and strategic axes were set. So we had certified quality wood, but now we need to certify building systems so we have good construction. So we based in an international experience in countries such as Finland, Canada, Japan, who is also collaborating with our roadmap through the IDB, through the Japanese fund, and we've been learning and based our activities in their learning assets, and also Chile. So to round up, I would like to set an example. One of the actions is that each executing branch can build a project based on an international contest. Why international? Because we wanted that those who know the most to participate and to create feedback so that we could get knowledge from that. Those contests were not only international. It had to be an international, if they were international, it had to be in association with a Uruguayan architecture office. So we had an office in Tranqueras, and now we have a building for who will be done in Durazno. Then a context for a hospital, thinking of socializing wood. And finally, we are working to create an infant center in the department of Cerro Largo with that initiative, so that people can start knowing about the good thing of building with wood and thinking about certified wood and all the good things this brings. So I could speak a lot more about these initiatives, but I'll leave it for afterwards. Oh, this is very interesting. Now I wanted to speak to Gerardo. Gerardo, you are in the transport sector of moving people in the cities. So tell us what has been done from the association you preside to detect which rooms for improvement are in the transport sector and passengers' mobility, what has been done, and what are the fears you faced with the drivers that had to substitute some things. So tell us about that.
Bueno, buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias por la invitación al
Thank you, everybody, for the invitation to be here today.
se sacaron muchos mitos en el transporte. Voy a hacer un poco la cronología histórica.
So, talking about our history and where we started working with this project, one of the first initiatives was to change our vehicles. The fleet of vans are now e-vans. We have been working with these e-vans for a couple of years now, and the milestone of where to buy batteries came second in our list of priorities. At the beginning, we were truly afraid of making this movement into the future, into bringing these technologies for a country where there is over 90% of renewable energy being generated. And this is completely independent of the cost for e-mobilities, according to the solutions that you may be aware of. So the efficiency means a saving of 90% in fuel. In our case, this was distributed in other areas, in particular the transport for other means. We were not able to manufacture diesel vehicles because we didn't have access to this in order to apply them to the taxi driver, to the taxis, to the cabs in the city. So it really depends on the kind of activity they're developing, but we are talking about around 30% cost fuel in the final reduction. In comparison with the cabs, we are above 15-20% as an average, depending of course of what you're talking about, the kind of vehicle. When you talk about electric, the program Subite, this is conducted by the Ministry of Industry and Engineer and Mining in Uruguay. They were the first ones initiating this, and they are super happy because they are now seeing the results. As I said, 90% of savings in the maintenance, and also for the end user, the people traveling, they feel very comfortable knowing that these kind of vehicles, you know, the vibration gets reduced because there is not an fuel run engine, and this also improves the quality of the service. So the end user also benefits from this, and they actually tell the driver about this. So when we try to transition these into private cars, the problem is how to sell them. So we have to really analyze the possibility. I think that we could orchestrate this to have like a check-in point when we have to face the full transition, right? So when you're going to sell your used vehicle in order to get an electronic one, it would be also very beneficial for us to count with a kind of certification in order for people to be able to purchase these zero emissions cars. We have seen benefits in the past, like in the program Subite. They would be given $5,000 as an aid for the purchase of a vehicle, and this was prorated by the calculation among the yield compared to the amount of kilometers, the independence that it has according to the energy efficiency program by the ministry. Of course, we think that this is the future. We have to make the most of the available energies that we have, whether wind, solar, or hydraulic, under this umbrella. I think that this is the true path towards a more efficient mobility, which will go hand in hand with the climate change. This is a worldwide responsibility, and as we signed in the Paris Agreement, this is our commitment. Thank you so much. I wanted now to give the floor to Sebastián. So please, can you share with us some of the sectorial policies that you have at your ministry, talking about the commercial sector, patents, maybe the private sector as well, if you can talk about that.
Decir que las políticas de eficiencia.
Thank you for the invitation. First of all, I would like to say that these policies are layered, right? So it's like different layers that we need to start taking care of in our development. First of all, energy efficiency policies are state policies who have their own budget, their own funding. So this is funding that is secured, which enables us to continue working year after year, and we can make progress in this sense. Maybe the profile of the current management, the current government, has to do with bringing energy efficiency with programs that are specific, as we said, regarding mobility, as we said, regarding the agricultural activities, for the dairy farms. But specifically, when we talk about this, we had over 100 auditings for the energy sector. We were able to hire technicians and to gather clear knowledge. We had good practices manuals, and now we're doing this with the gastronomic industry. Other measures, other specific policies. In Uruguay, over 90% of the companies are SMEs, micro, medium-sized, and intermediate size, middle-sized companies. These, of course, mean that we're talking about specific features, right? Because many times the owners of these companies are the workers themselves. So the capital is the capital of the company. So the owner is risking his or her own money or capital, and they don't usually have a specialized or dedicated technical team looking for different energy efficiency alternatives. What they have is a management team to carry out their project. So this is why from our ministry we have developed a specific program which would help the sectors to take standardized measures that have to do, for example, with the substitution of pumps for thermal pumps, for the transition for e-cars, which is, of course, is going to impact their capacity. Because as we know, how much money we would be saving if we were to replace the windows, right, or the other kinds of things in construction, I mean, that would end up reducing the cost in refrigeration or air conditioning, etc. So the benefit is huge, and this is translated into cash, in metallic. This is something that they will see reflected in their accounts. So then, after they receive our financial aid, they are able to invest up to 80 or 90% into their own companies. So in addition to this, this is the base, right? And it goes layer by layer. All the energy efficiency measures have their own benefit, and it means that after 1 year of being implemented, they can actually apply to obtain this energy efficiency certificate. And this is good promotion for the companies as well. It's important. From the public sector, I can tell you that we are also working with energy efficiency for the construction of households. We are providing support to MEVIR. We bring this financial aid for the acquisition, for the purchase of refrigerators or other home appliances. So this is a second layer. Energy efficiency doesn't mean the technological change per se. It doesn't mean change your incandescent light for a LED one. Energy efficiency also is a way, it is also a way to use what we have at hand, at home, and change that. Because if you know, if I leave my home and I left the lights on and they are LED, those lights will be on for 13, maybe 14 hours. So the idea is that we work with MEVIR with this. This is something very peculiar because we're talking about households in the countryside. They have a different social aspect related to it. We have Alicia here, she's in the room today. And they have really toured the whole country. They have visited and they have had, not talks, but they had actually conducted workshops about the efficient use of these households. And when we talk about this, we're not talking about engineering, we're not talking about technology. We are talking about using the proper use or the most efficient use of your heating system for water, for enjoying a bath, make the most of your gas, very simple things, or how to ventilate, and through the cross ventilation, how you can also generate other benefits for health, etc. So this is very important, because the first stage that we have towards the future is the cultural approach. Apart from any other kinds of benefits, aids that we can continue to offer, the cultural state, the culture of energy efficiency, which has to then goes from those layers that are best trained in this topic to go and reach every citizen. So this is one of the biggest cultural activities that we're going to have actually taking place tonight at 7 or 8 tonight, and this is a national energy efficiency word, where voluntarily organizations from the biggest companies in the country up until rural schools from the countryside, they present themselves with their individual projects. Of course, we have different categories, and we run this competition. So category by category, they will be receiving an award for energy efficiency. So that would be a true pleasure to witness. You are all invited. It will be at 7 p.m. here, and I think you will be having more examples of what we're doing. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, we're going to be present today, and it's going to be very interesting to see. Stephanie, what do you think about the general panorama for these sectors? What is the state of the art in the world in these sectors? What can we bring to this discussion for these sectors that we were talking about with the rest of the panelists? Thank you, Sebastian. I have the challenge of speaking last after these great panelists. This is a great challenge to answer, because as you were saying in the previous panel, you cannot copy and paste the experiences. You cannot bring them from abroad and copy and paste. It is always very important to take a look at the local context, whether the country is importer or exporter of energy, how the institutions work. Florencia from Argentina said that in Argentina they need to work with the provinces, with the municipalities, because the energy administration is by province. This is the same in Canada, where I come from. So each province has its own jurisdiction on energy. So Quebec, for example, is 100% with hydraulic electricity. It is not the same with other provinces, and maybe another province can run everything on oil fuels. So I cannot copy and paste, but I can mention some of the experiences, interesting ones.
Hay un desafío que ya han hecho mucho.
There is a huge challenge for Uruguay, that something that you have not done. I have visited Uruguay. I started coming in 2006 to work with the ministry and with UTE, with two different initiatives. The first one had to do with the labeling system for end user equipment that has worked very, very well, and it has proven good results overall. And I also have meetings with UTE in order to promote the ESCO concept that Unica was mentioning before, to start a public ESCO to implement these energy efficiency projects in Uruguay in general, but specifically in the public sector. So if I start with the livestock sector, our experience in other countries, the stock reading in other countries and in Canada, this is a sector that is very affected by climate change, the way in which they work. They have to change completely sometimes the way in which they work over the last 5 years. So these sectors who didn't need irrigation in the past, now they do because of the droughts. In the past they used to enjoy rainfall levels, but now they really need to learn about water management, how to manage these water resources to use them throughout time. So energy efficiency can benefit from these new ways of working. So if you need irrigation, you need to pump these, so they are implementing solar pumps, solar power pumps, and they also need to take a look at the irrigation system on how they can reduce the consumption, make the most of a specific irrigation size. Maybe they do dripping irrigation. I am not sure if this is the case here for fungus or any other kind of issues in Belize, for example. There was no issues at all over the last years, but now they had a lot of problems in the agricultural sector as well. So they need to treat at the same time as they are irrigating.
Visto en otros países es no, cambiar.
Changing machinery, the agriculture, the tractors, the machinery, this is a massive investment for agricultural producers. However, if this is very old, maybe you can replace it to a more effective machinery. So maybe it would have a GPS that in the past you wouldn't think about that. Why install a GPS? But why would you go 2 times over the same line in a very big field? At the end of the day, you are going to be saving fuel. So this is something that is interesting, and we have studied this specifically in Western countries in Europe, adapting this to the new reality to change the way in which you work the land. I think I learned a new word in Spanish today. I think that this is also very interesting, the way that you do your farming. But Uruguay is already doing some of the things that we were suggesting before. The efficiency in the dairy farms, the improvement of efficiency for poultry producers. This is also very important. Now, when it comes to the residential sector, there are many things being done. Some of the things that came to my mind is, why is labeling so efficient at a domestic level? It would be good to have a labeling system at a residential level, because this is something that people know, they see this. And this has to do with training the end user on how to understand labels. But now Uruguay, you already have that knowledge, so make the most of it and implement more labels, maybe in vehicles and other things. And of course, you can promote other uses of energies that maybe you're not yet addressing, maybe for cooking. Maybe again you have to have a look at whether you need to use another electric use for cooking, or how to coordinate this with UTE. Because of course this is a challenge when we want to electrify and extend the grid. We need capacity. We have the challenge ourselves in Canada.
In Quebec as well, although we have 100% electricity, we need to save it in order to have fuel for all the electric vehicles we want to have. Another thing I was thinking, that you combine the Ministry of Forestry and Housing, is that a very simple thing to save is to have trees around the houses, because with the shadow you avoid using lots of energy for the air conditioning, and in winter the leaves fall down, so you have the sun on the house. In Quebec we have lots of forestry, and when there is a fire, as the catastrophe we had in Canada, is that the wood has not a lot of embedded emissions in comparison with cement. So it's a win-win using timber. We have a policy of including even more timber, even the base, even at least the base, the foundation of the houses is built with timber in Quebec, in Canada. And now electrification of vehicles, both personal and public transport vehicles, will be the challenge for the world, not only for Uruguay. And the management, again, of the electricity is what will give the fact. What we can see in Europe, not in Canada, because in Canada it's another thing, but public transport in Europe is increasingly becoming free in order to motivate people to use public transport and leave their cars at home. Again, to diminish the use related to transport. And I think that's enough for the time being, but I can add more later. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Very good contributions. I wanted to ask Gerardo, what is it necessary in view of what has been said from the sector? What is necessary to accelerate the conversion of combustion vehicles to electric vehicles? What is missing yet? Well, this is a sector that has been regulated for only 7 years and has been included in the passenger transport, and it should be included in leasing. This depends on the municipality and the Ministry of Finances, because when you remove the VAT to the vehicle, because the IMESI has already been removed, so that tax is already gone. But if it were to be bought by leasing, we wouldn't have to pay the VAT. And we had a maximum of 10 years for the transportation and 6 years for the combustion vehicles and 10 for the electric vehicles. So, as your banks do not give loans easily, and it's very difficult to have the exchange of vehicles we need, because nowadays we have almost 3,000 vehicles, and it's very difficult for us to have the rechange after the 10 years use, because banks do not loan the 100% or 70 or 80% of the price, which is what is needed in order to continue with the activity, because there is a very high risk for the physical persons that work on those vehicles. This happens because this risk, if it's set on the insurance of the vehicle is insured, but the problem is that the loans are take into consideration the person that is driving during 12 hours the same vehicle. So the same happened in the past with very old. In the past there was no leasing, and we had lots of very old cars, and now this is happening with the electric vehicles. Where you were speaking about projects that you are about to implement, but what are you planning in the roadmap in order to incorporate timber houses on the medium and long term? Well, this roadmap is prepared for 4 years with internal evaluation after the first 2 years, which will be next year. And this encompasses building national directives, the characterization of timber, and creating technical guidelines, including standards. And we learn from the more advanced countries, but we also need at the local level our own tools, and those are being drafted with interinstitutional teams that are working not only at UNIT, LATU, TU, and there's a challenge when we say timber and when we say termites. So we are mapping fungi and termites in all Uruguay in order to know how to preserve this timber in these buildings. And we are making progress in lots of things. We are starting, but these steps are very robust steps so that we can spread in the territory this idea of building with timber. From the Ministry of Housing, one of the requirements for the non-traditional building systems is the possibility of giving and receiving. So they evaluate the technical teams. The technical teams evaluate in order to be able to build. There are already 5 building systems with timber that will be useful for social housing, and this creates the technical support to avoid bad buildings or bad practices. And these contests we mentioned, we found them to set places where to put these timber buildings, and also to create awareness of this. Now we're going to have technical guidelines that would tell us how our timber work in different situations, both in CLT and for light trimmed. Thank you very much for your answer, Maria. I wanted to ask you, in which other sectors are you planning to work on the medium or long term, where you see there are opportunities regarding energy efficiency, if you had certain design policies or etc.?
Gracias, Sebastián. Bueno.
Thank you, Sebastián. Well, undoubtedly, when we speak about energy efficiency, this is transverse to all the sections of the ministry. As I said some time ago, regarding the law of the budget 1826, which gave rise of the tables of rural development and the Council of National Agriculture Council, we added the Ministry of Environment, mayors, etc. And we are convinced that we are making big steps from the Ministry of Industry and Energy on the same line. So we think it's fundamental that the information provided is done not only from the center, from the capital city, but also in the rest of the departments where municipalities are working, where city councils are taking part. So the Ministry of Cattle Grazing has to take this to the rest of the country, so we have an holistic convergence regarding social public policies. But this is why we worked with Cantero, with Sebastián. We want to continue working on this decentralizing activity so that this starts growing and socializing in the rest of the country, as we do with UTE. So when you ask me where are the sectors, that she was mentioning as well, and you, machinery, mobility. So undoubtedly, in a country where gas or petrol is not from the country, we have to look for the alternatives, and today we have these alternatives. So we have to think politically of these policies from an angle where we can incorporate different greater subsidies, and we need to continue on that line, because on forestry we are seeing it. We also want that the family producer, the minor producer, has this outreach and the possibility of having the necessary traceability. So if forestry comes from the field, well, let's give back this to the rural population so that they can have access to these houses that will improve their quality of life and make their lives more sustainable. Because one of the main challenges we have in the agricultural sector is that in the post-pandemic we have a new rural reality which does not live from the agricultural things, but demand other kinds of services. And in that sense, energy efficiency is part of the DNA, because they work on technology or other things which are not the traditional activities in the rural areas. And going back, we really like the ideas of creating social and public policies that are more holistic and updated regarding the necessary efficiency. So when we were speaking about irrigation systems, for example, today tomato has some kind of fungi that happens nowadays and didn't happen in the past, and this happened in fisheries as well. Direct dependence on petrol in fisheries. So the other day we were meeting in Garzón with different producers, fishermen, and they asked us how to continue with the different processes of, for example, cleaning fish. And here we need all the different subsidies that should exist in order to adapt with this change that has to take place. So here we see the possibility of putting the producer again in the agricultural activity, because technology it's something that people get in love with technology. People are tired of doing mechanical and manual activities, and then they have very high costs in fuels, oils, etc. So, well, the challenge is we have to come to this kind of activities where we learn a lot, we open our mind, it changes our mindset, and we enjoy a lot.
Sebastián, I wanted to ask you, from the ministry, what are the challenges that we have ahead of us for the economy, stakeholders? What are the obstacles that we need to overcome? What's your insight?
General, porque cada uno de los sectores podría tener una charla en sí misma de todos nosotros.
First of all, I would like to start with what we have done in our sector. We have three main axes to make progress. The first one, that was already mentioned, has to do with the territorial aspect of these energy efficiency aspects. That is, the concept and the benefits must be given throughout the 19 departments in our country. Of course, with different programs for benefits, for efficient localities. We have over 100 projects approved so far, 20 more are coming. So the local actor, the mayor, the municipality running an energy efficiency project. But we also have to think of what's coming next. Is it the project itself what we're looking for? Yes, but the answer is for these municipal governments to think about energy efficiency. So when they are about to purchase a vehicle, they want to think, okay, what are the uses that I can electrify? Maybe not necessarily purchasing an electronic truck, but maybe how to substitute vans or other fossil fuels vehicles for different principles that are going to be more efficient, replacing LED lights, changing their air conditioning systems, the labeling part with this policy, not only because of a price. This is one of the policies. The other part is the identification of sectors with higher levels of consumption, where with the substitution of cleaner means of transportation, we would be able to overcome these obstacles that many times are due to a breach in the cultural awareness, and we need to identify a group of investors, that maybe what was mentioned about the remises and the cap, the taxes. So we need to generate a very big number so they can transmit their experience themselves. Pernambus's mobility that was mentioned yesterday, a very good measure which was for free. I would like to tell you that Flores department, Trinidad is capital. It is the smallest capital in the country, and they have public buses that are hop on, hop off, and they are for free. And now they are conducting another program. The idea of Subite buses was to have these first e-buses. We know that we don't have the muscle, the money to realize a general subsidy system for all the departments in the countryside. However, we wanted to achieve at least to have one, and that will then generate a cascade, sort of a cascade effect beyond the cultural capacities, apart from taking a look at the process of loading, besides knowing that this is a completely different world, because of course it has its own features when it comes to loading these sectors. We're going to continue to identify them, of course, bring our promotion and our support, but you give this small push and the market itself will take care of the rest, because people will see the benefit. We have Gerardo here saying, I already have my e-car, and other chauffeurs were asking, is it cheap? Is it expensive? Do you have any performance issues? What about the spare parts? Are they expensive or not? And the third leg has to do with the access of these energy efficiency systems. They must be accessible for those who are being behind. And that means those that have less information or less technical capacity. This is where we need to reach out. The first way is through education. In fact, we have a contest, a national contest, where all our UTE students can present. It's going to take place the 7th of December for the award ceremony, where we will have around 1,000 students with very interesting projects. They're going to come and participate in Montevideo. But we also have talks, as we said, with MEBIR. We also have talks with an efficient use in our homes, either from cooking, from thermotanks, and also with programs which results in the subsidy. Is not to expect a quick switch or a profound switch in the acquisition of equipment, but to have these measures available, for example, for electric motors, electric bikes. This is something that we are trying to propose for motorbikes, so culturally they know that we have this technology, and for those who are not able to access to these motorbikes because they are not aware of their performance or maybe because they lack the economic resources, well, maybe they still have access to it with a small benefit, with a small aid, but again, the purpose of this is to generate a cultural change. So we continue to work in this sense, launching over 120 energy audits for the hotel and gastronomic sectors, where we generate specific best practices manuals. We also generate economic support and aid for these smaller transitions, and we also try to generate this efficiency culture. These are the policies. Bring them into the territory, bring them into those who are not applying them yet, and to let those who are not aware with the use of technology, we give this first initial push to a small group, so that will, with the word of mouth, continue to cascade. Thank you. It was so important to hear what you were saying. Stephanie, I wanted to ask you, what is the source and what is the trend for energy efficiency? Does it come from the raising awareness part, or maybe with the technological change? What do you think? A bit of both? Yes, you have to address all angles. Maybe something that was not mentioned, but it was mentioned in the previous panel, has to do with regulation. Uruguay is very strong in labeling, as we said. However, there aren't standards for energy performance. So this could be something that Uruguay can address, maybe for those equipment that are lacking label right now, like engines or bigger equipment. If we're talking about Pymes or the SMEs or the industrial sector, we know that over 50% of electrical consumption is caused by engines, motors. So the idea is to have more efficient engines entering into the country. So if that is to happen, that would be a change if we are able to restrict the amount of engines entering into the country, right? So when the end user needs to buy a new engine, if they don't have the possibility to buy maybe a cheaper one, but one that is consuming more, if only the best ones are available, then you're also improving. Same applies for central air conditioning. Of course, we have a standard that's called MEP, which is more efficient than actually a label, because you don't go to the air conditioning store to choose for your cooler. So the idea is to have this complementary regulation, complementing the ones that you already have, in order to reach more sectors, including the MIPYMEs, the industrial sector, the commercial sector. I was also talking about hotel sector, what has to do with the air conditioning, the heating of water. Maybe you could promote these. Maybe you could also promote a water system with solar energies. This is very interesting also for irrigation. So you can continue to improve in this sense, and again, massive raising awareness campaigns that have to be tailor-made for each group. You don't talk the same way for SMEs. You don't talk in the same way, depending on whether you're talking, your audience comes from an SMEs, or if it's an industry or the end user. So I will continue to use Uruguay in my presentations to include them as a good example when I visit other countries. So I congratulate you for that. Thank you, Stephanie. Just to conclude, I would like to open up for Q&A, comments from the audience. If there are no questions, I would like to thank all our panelists today for your brilliant presentations. It was very interesting. And thank you everybody for attending. And I would like to remind you that at 7 p.m. we will have the National Energy Efficiency Award. You're all invited. Thank you so much.